We're good. Morning, everybody. It's day before Christmas and have 3 interviews going to do today. And starting out this morning, I'm very happy that Kate Carr, women's soccer coach at West Virginia Tech University, took the time out and is going to come on and talk about her program, some recruiting and everything. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kate Carr and have her give us a little background and bio on herself. Morning, Kate, and Merry Christmas. I'll get that into you.
Happy Christmas Eve, everyone. My name's Kate Carr. I'm the head coach for women's soccer at West Virginia Tech. I'm currently finishing my 2nd season there. So just a little background on me. Like most people, I played soccer since I was a toddler and have just loved the game ever since. So I played high school and college soccer. I went to Earlham College, a little small D3 school in Richmond, Indiana. And I played there for all 4 years. I also played basketball for 4 years. And after I graduated, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So I was given a great opportunity to come back and coach at my alma mater. So I actually coached as an assistant at Earlham for 3 years after that. At that point, I pursued my master's degree because I finally figured out kind of what I wanted to do. So I pursued a degree in kinesiology with a focus in sports psychology. That pretty much encouraged me to continue to coach because I found that sports psychology is a growing field and a very necessary field for the success of student athletes, especially. Obviously, when you start getting into higher levels of play and professional level, it's definitely out there, and you constantly hear about people working with sports psychologists all the time. But it's very rare, in my opinion, in the college level, which I think is where you can make the most impact, the most positive impact on student athletes, especially because they're going through a lot more than just focusing on sports. They have tons of stressors and tons of things to deal with outside of sports that coincide and they impact their level of play. So that's how I ended up into coaching. So after I was at Earlham for a couple years and did my master's degree, I went to another school and coached for 2 more years at Indiana University East as an assistant as well. So it was a totally different experience going from NCAA Division III to the NAIA. So there was a lot of learning experiences and a curve to follow and things like that. Once I finished there, I was given the opportunity to coach here as a head coach. So this is my first stint as a head coach, which is very exciting. So like I said, I'm in my 2nd year here and slowly developing what I want a program to look like, which is probably the most challenging but the most rewarding part, I would think, of my career. And that's where I'm at right now. And I'm very excited to continue growing with it.
Cool. You know what? You have a couple things that you mentioned that, you know what? I'm gonna just ask and go a little off the cuff here. The kinesiology and the sports psychology. I mean, I was a physical education, health, and then had my minor in sports science. So I, went to kinesiology, but biomechanics stuff. So you learn about how the body works and everything like that. Sports psychology, something. It's great that you brought that up. Talk just a little bit, and if you could, about what all that entails.
Sure. So just to throw that out there, because I didn't mention that, I went to Miami University of Ohio for that degree. They're one of the best programs in the country, my opinion, and well known. They have some of the most amazing professors that are leaders in the field. So sports psychology is, depending on what institution you're going through, it can be melded into kinesiology or it can be melded into the social sciences because it's a overlapping combination of the two. So you talk about the social aspect of sports, so the psychology, the processes the mental processes and how they affect your physical game. So it's combining the two and finding how your mental state may affect your physical performance. So that is the combination that you look for in sports psychology. So a lot of what we dealt with and talked about was factors of anxiety, whether that be positive or negative anxiety, because it can be both. Dealing with stressors during a competition and how that affects you mentally, and then in turn will affect your physical game. So it's a lot of how does this aspect affect this aspect, and not just working around training certain physical skills, but also mentally training yourself to get through the strain and stress of injury and outside factors. How many times does a kid have overwhelming educational things where they're swamped with homework and suddenly their performance drops? So it's looking at the whole person and the things going on in their entire life that are affecting their mental state that then affect their focus on performance.
That's awesome. I mean, you know what? I'm gonna come on. We may do another thing with you here just on that aspect and get into it, because it's interesting, because you know there's so many I see all the time with the kids that I do and coaching and everything that I do about all the mental stuff now and everything like that. So it's really interesting, and I think that you could have a good light. We'll come back on if you would and talk about that. I want to ask you now just a little bit. You know, West Virginia Tech, you know, NAIA school down in Beckley and all that. You know, you've been NCAA, Division III, NAIA. Talk a little bit about the differences, and then if you would, to tell us about West Virginia Tech, what it has to offer, its advantages. I know it's a great school.
Sure. Okay, so to start talking just briefly about the difference in NCAA and NAIA, obviously my experience is a little bit limited, but as an NCAA institution, you are educated on the 3 different divisions that they offer as well. So I have a little bit of knowledge as far as the breakdown goes. And I do have that conversation with a lot of recruits because they don't typically know the difference between NCAA and NAIA unless they've been in the recruiting process for a while. So I get that question a lot, especially regarding, well, what is NAIA and how is it different? So a lot of people are familiar with the NCAA. It's just the bigger, more prominent league that everyone is associated with, you know, March Madness and all the major football squads. Like those are NCAA Division I big time programs. So that's your typical understanding of what the NCAA is a Division I bigger program. And then it breaks down from there. Obviously, we know there's 3 divisions. So Division I, Division II, Division III. The biggest difference that most people would need to know about is scholarship offers. Division I and Division II have athletic scholarships, as well as obviously academic money there. Division III does not offer athletic scholarship. They typically run on academic scholarships or grants and things like that. So a lot of people have a negative connotation of Division III as being a lower level, which in some ways, yes, that's a generalization. There is very, very successful programs across the board, Division I, II, and III, that are very highly competitive. You look at the top level Division III, and they can compete with Division Is. There's no distinguishing of that. It's just a matter of, it comes down to money and buying the better players is what it really comes down to, in my opinion. The NAIA is completely separate from that. It's a completely separate league that people can play in. There aren't the divisions near as often. Obviously, some sports do have divisions because they're bigger. There's more opportunity there. But as far as soccer goes, there is just one division, and it's across the board. The NAIA, it varies by institution as far as what scholarships are offered. So, for example, we offer both academic and athletic scholarship. and the way that institutions in the NAIA offer them is just different, and it varies. So that's where recruits have to be careful about, well, this school said this and this school said this. It's very different in the NAIA because they're completely separate and individual. They don't have as many rules and regulations as far as the recruiting process goes as the NCAA does. So there's a lot more restrictions on the process of recruiting at the NCAA than there is in the NAIA. So there's a little bit more lax and differences in the NAIA that aren't as strict as what the NCAA offers right now. So with West Virginia Tech, we are somewhat of a branch campus of the main West Virginia University. In that, we follow a lot of the guidelines that WVU puts forth, but we all are so separate. So again, WVU is a NCAA Division I, so their academics and their athletics are slightly different. Since we're a branch campus, but we're a tech institution, we specialize in some other degrees that might not be offered at other schools or other branch campuses of WVU. So obviously we're big with the engineering, the nursing, the pre-med. We have a lot of those degrees as opposed to your generalized, psychology and things like that. Not that we don't offer those, but there are other ones that we do really well, specifically because we are a tech school. Sure. And then again, because we're NAIA, our sports are a little bit different. We are not Mountaineers, we're Golden Bears. So there's just those differences that people have to kind of finagle when they're looking at schools and what they want out of that. And it ultimately comes down to the experience of the student athlete and what they want. Because every division in the NCAA, and then when you're looking at the NAIA, everything is going to be a different experience. So it comes down to what that experience should look like for that athlete.
Sure. If you could, Kate, what's the enrollment at West Virginia Tech?
I believe right now it's sitting around 1,800. We do have quite a few commuters as well, just because it is a branch campus. But up until about 2017, we were actually located in a different city in West Virginia. And so we've somewhat recently, obviously in 2017, we moved to Beckley. And since then, I believe the enrollment has tripled compared to what it was prior, because it's just a better location. A lot of people can actually recognize Beckley as a city that they go through with their traveling and things like that. It's one of the more major areas of West Virginia that people tend to cut through. And it's easier to get to campus, much easier now than it was.
Cool. Got to go through there many times in all of my travels out on the recruiting trail and watching kids and everything like that. I want to get into a little bit now about your philosophy and how it goes to West Virginia Tech about recruiting. If you could, give us, I know your base areas around, and then you branch out. Just talk to us a little bit about how you go about the recruiting process for your program.
Right. So especially right now with COVID, a lot of it is much more digitized, because with the rules and regulations that state to state vary, and with our institution, being on media is a lot of where our recruiting comes from. It was significantly, because it's obviously easier to sit at a computer and go through recruiting profiles for an hour, and you get to see tons and tons of kids. But even more so with COVID, that's pretty much what we're regulated to do now. So a lot of times it's just going on a variety of different recruiting bases and plugging in certain aspects that we might be looking for. So if we have a certain position, or obviously if there's certain GPA or test score standards that we're looking for, then we can plug those in and just narrow down a search and find people on those websites. So I think, obviously one of my best recommendations to recruits is to put themselves out there to be found. Like I said, especially now with COVID, that the best thing they can do is put their videos up and email coaches like crazy if it's of any interest to them to get to play in college.
Sure. how early will you start looking at a young lady to come and play soccer for you?
I have a pretty, um, I feel like a lot of coaches would agree with me. They just wouldn't verbalize it. But most of the time, I don't try to recruit heavily until they're at least a sophomore or junior. Um, Women in general, their bodies change so drastically from their freshman year to their senior year that there is just no guarantee that you see a kid as a freshman in high school and they're going to be the same player when they graduate. So if you make an offer because this kid is an all-star as a freshman and then her body completely changes and her game completely changes, it's a little bit risky in my opinion. And the other factor of that is, again, kind of with the sports psych thing, is that when you're talking about really, really young athletes, there's so much development that has to happen. And I think that my personal opinion as a freshman and sophomore in high school, you should be focused on being a kid and enjoying that and actually figuring out what the heck it is that you want to do with your life. Because even then, it's hard to imagine someone who isn't even able to drive yet to even like have a concept of what they might want to do with their lives. So I don't like to pressure anyone that's not ready for those thought processes to really start thinking about what they're going to do in college and spend thousands of dollars trying to, educate and do something with their lives. So typically when I start really heavily recruiting, they're going to be either late in their sophomore year or sometime during their junior season. That's when I feel like they're starting to really narrow down what it is and remotely interested in doing for a career. So I think that that's when they start actually being able to have conversations with college coaches about what their intentions may be.
You and I, it seems we share a lot of common beliefs. I mean, in my business, I mean, I have so many clients and it covers so many states and locales. But I have, like I said, I do boys and girls in every sport. And also with coaching, it's just so funny that and there's been rule changes on early commitments and everything like that with girls and all that. But in just my experience, I mean, I've had young girls that 12, 13 years old that have offers have been made to and they commit. And it's so funny because I'll talk to the coach and I said, it's great, but I said, you have to sit there and deal with this now because, all they know is a name and stuff like that, and that you bring them on campus and they don't want to see anything else. They just want to see that arena or venue where they're going to be, and they understand that. And it's the other thing that you said, and it's you're very right. I mean, young ladies mature at a young age, quicker than young guys and all that. And 12 and 13, man, they can be very good and all that. But it's like you said, I mean, it's almost like going and gambling on something to happen a couple of years later and everything like that. So an interesting take, and I'm glad that you put that information out there because I'm behind you a lot. And while you know what, it's good that coaches may have your information early. I mean, I often tell them sophomore into your junior year, there's going to be a big thing, just like you do. So that's some great points, Kate. I really appreciate it. Getting in a little bit now, soccer philosophies and strategies differ and everything. And, put out there, what a young lady can, look forward to as far as a style. Does it change, based on the players that you have and everything like that? But every coach has their foundations and their non-negotiables and everything like that. So build your strategy. Let me hear about your soccer philosophy and what you want to inject at West Virginia Tech.
Right. Um, as a second year head coach, the soccer philosophy is very difficult for me, just because I feel like it's too early in the process to really specify what it is or what it might be. I still, like I said, I'm still growing as a young coach, so that's always a difficult question for me. I think my typical go-to is the building blocks that I have set in place or would like to set in place at this point. Um, and so a lot of that comes with the sports psychology aspect and developing the student athlete as a whole. I'm not just in it as a coach. So if someone comes into my program and they don't improve outside of soccer, or they don't grow outside of soccer, then I don't feel like I've done my job. So a lot of times, my girls they probably get tired of hearing all of the life lessons that I have for them. But a lot of times I'm the coach that will relate, a lesson from soccer is actually a lesson in life, and how are you applying what I'm trying to tell you here more than just soccer. So talking about mental training strategies and things like that, while I talk about them, learning to deal with stressors on the field, and how do you react as a player when your referee is missing calls or they're calling ridiculous calls. How do you deal with that? And then you turn around and they come to me and say, well, this professor is being difficult. And I say, well, you handled the referee just fine last week, so how do you relate the two, and how can you transfer that over and start using that outside of soccer, because it's a life skill in my opinion. So some of the building blocks again would be more about using soccer as a way to build some life skills, because once they graduate, they're on their own. So college is a little bit of a bubble that they get to stay in for 4 years, and it's a safety net where they've got tons of, they've got sisters on their teams because we're all a family, and they've got that support system, and they've got, coaches that constantly have their back, and professors who are constantly watching out for them. So that's the best time, in my opinion, to start really developing who they are and who they're going to be as a person outside of college, because that's where they have to hit the ground running and learn to deal with things. So that being said, the one thing that I really, really pushed last season as my first year was talking about core values and implementing them into our program. So they don't have much as far as soccer specific goes. They're not about like learning how to do for certain foot skills or working on your agility or anything like that. They are strictly based in what it is to be a team and how that affects them as an individual. So for example, the core values that we came up with last year were family, being our best, resilience, making a difference, accountability, and balance. So those were all terms that my team came up with because they felt that those were important, not just soccer specific. That's what we want to achieve by being part of this program. And then they obviously broke those down and described what each of those mean. And then, we talk about them as far as what they look like on the soccer field, or what they look like outside of soccer with just their team and how they interact outside of it. So I think that my biggest goal is to develop the student athlete because they're built for bigger things than just playing soccer. So I want to make sure that I'm doing my part to better prepare them for once they leave and they're no longer in the bubble that I've provided them with by being at Tech.
Cool. You know what? I've really learned a lot about you, about your program and everything, and I really respect how you're going about it, and predict some good things for you. I'm not going to put any pressure on you or anything like that, but yeah, I can see that that West Virginia Tech has a good person and somebody that's going to build a great program, and I look for successful things. Just want to end up, uh, you know, ask every coach this because we've been going through it. It's that once in a lifetime event that for the kids and for the coaches and everything so far. COVID pandemic or era, as you want to call it. Just give me your message to your girls and your message to people out there about how we can sit there and get through this, and it should be good, you being the sports psychology person and everything like that. So I mean, you should have some good stuff, but just a message to get through and what we can look forward to.
Um, hmm. I think, the term rolling with the punches is probably the best fit for 2020 and COVID in general. I don't foresee things ever really being back to what quote unquote normal was prior to COVID. Long term, you're looking at tons of restrictions and regulations and protocols across all athletics and institutions and across the country in general. So I think learning to roll with the punches, again, it's dealing with the stressors, coping with what you can, and constantly looking to find the bright side of it. So for example, this year we finished the season as it was scheduled. That was a huge achievement, and we were lucky to be able to do that. A lot of teams did not, have not finished, will not finish. So it's finding the small successes in what you have to deal with and what you've been dealt. So yeah, keep playing through it when you can, and still keep your passion when you have to, be put on hold, and keep rolling with the punches.
Oh, there you go. I mean, that's about it. I mean, I tell my clients, players, parents, and everything. I'm like, with everything that's going on and how the NCAA has changed stuff, transfer portals, this, that, and the other. I'm like, recruiting could really be a complete mess and all that. And I say go 4 or 5 years out. I mean, it's going to be tough. And you know what? I mean, I talk to them about the same thing. Hey, you gotta roll with the punches. There's no reason for you not to be able to get workouts. There's everything like that, and be ready to go when everything's through. But it's just crazy, and I wish you guys the best of luck in everything down there. And I'm happy that you took the time before traveling up the way to Ohio to spend with your family, to sit there and talk with us. And I will get your message out there, and it's been a real eye opener for me. I've enjoyed, I've learned, and I'm 56 years old, and there's times that I think that I've seen it all, and it always comes back. No, you haven't. Just be open-minded and go with what comes that day. So I appreciate it, Coach Carr, and you have safe travels, and I wish you, your staff, your players, and everybody in your family a Merry Christmas. And I will have you back on because we'll get into some other topics.
Okay, sounds great.
All righty. Guys, this has been Coach Kate Carr, West Virginia Tech women's soccer. Have a Merry Christmas. I won't be doing any Christmas interviews, and we'll be back to talk to you guys later. Thanks, Coach.
No problem.